Hello, hello, hello. Hey guys, hope you're all good. So today we will be doing a presentation or webinar on NEAT and steps. We'll give it 1 minute, see if anyone joins in. Otherwise, we will be recording this. Um, and yeah, you guys will get access to this link in the school platform. So again, no worries on that front. Any questions, we'll hold those off and we'll leave those to the end. It's going to be a relatively short presentation, short, but also immensely impactful. Again, I will start the presentation by saying that this is probably one of the most underrated areas of your fat loss journey. And for anyone that, pushes themselves to increase both NEAT and steps in general, typically speaking, from my experience, goes on to not only have a very, very successful weight loss journey, but then goes on to maintain their weight loss as well. Okie dokie, let's get going. So, like I said, NEAT and steps is the main focus for today's topic. NEAT, the sexy, fancy word of non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So what does that mean? In short, and unfortunately not quite as sexy as the name itself, it is basically looking at the energy in which you expend, which essentially doesn't include exercise. Okay, so it's kind of like unplanned movement, which you're not specifically scheduling in, like a workout, and other kind of forms of exercise, cardiovascular work, etc. So things like walking, as I'm doing most of the day, typing. Unfortunately, typing isn't a huge, contribution to that, but typing, gardening, DIY, fidgeting, things of that nature. And the walking component is essentially the unplanned stuff, right? So when I'm going to and from the kitchen to get my prepared meals, no snacking involved. On the commute to work, just pottering around the house, as I do quite often, especially after I've consumed caffeine. I'm moving around in my chair, I'm fidgeting, I'm picking things up, I'm moving things around. All of that stuff contributes towards your total daily energy expenditure. Okay. And of which, all of these things seem very, very insignificant, but accumulatively, actually, they stack up to be a significant proportion of your of your fat loss results, right? That's why you'll always know people who can stay in shape and people who are in shape. And it's kind of like some of these people don't even work out, like they don't even exercise, and yet they're in great shape. Well, I guarantee you they have a very high NEAT, and they're very active individuals. They might not specifically be doing HIIT classes or going to scheduled workouts or things of that nature, but I guarantee you they move a lot. And like I said, it's one of the most underrated things which will have a net positive impact on your results, something that you don't necessarily have to physically go out of your way to book and schedule into your diary like you would do, for example, like a workout. You don't have to commute to and from a gym to get it done. It's essentially free to a certain degree, and it's low intensity, right? Well, I guess depends on how you look at gardening and DIY, but it can be low intensity. So NEAT is kind of one of the key areas, which we'll go into more detail now. So why is NEAT so important for fat loss? Well, as you can see here, this is your total daily energy expenditure, okay? And obviously a significant proponent of that, or proportion of that, is 70%, which comes from your basal metabolic rate, which is essentially the calories or energy that you burn or expend at rest. So based off of your metabolism, based off of your weight, this is how much energy or calories your body consumes effectively when it's at rest. So doing sweet FA. The next biggest chunk of that actually comes from NEAT. So again, your lifestyle, your movement. Are you sat on your ass like me in this chair all day, or are you pottering around, moving, going from meeting to meeting? Like I said, moving, picking stuff up, putting stuff down. Is your job more kind of like laborsome? Are you working on a construction site? Or, like I said, are you, like me, sat behind a computer? Then, following on for that, we have, the thermic effect of food, which is roughly 10%. So again, the amount of calories that are used to burn, break down, and digest food. And then we have EAT, which is exercise, activity, thermogenesis. Again, that's actually specific workouts, right? So that's you going to your Sunday night Zumba class, or scheduling in for your Les Mills body combat, or doing your CrossFit training. That is this small proportion here, which takes up roughly 5% of your total energy expenditure. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. So again, this leads us to the conversation now of NEAT versus exercise and just general movement. So I am going to be including, to a certain degree, steps as part of this, because it can technically do it. I know that we, effectively program steps into our days, and we're going to be going into that in a little more detail shortly. But just like I said, stuff where it's not a scheduled workout, because for a lot of people, it's like, you have to look at cardio, you have to look at HIIT training, high intensity, sweating, output, high heart rate, all of these things that are associated with fat loss, whereas moving, not so much. Moving seems insignificant. Moving seems like it wouldn't contribute that much. But like I said, cumulatively, it stacks up across a day, and it's something that you can do in high volumes relative to general exercise. So like I said, 15% comes from your NEAT and only 5% comes from your EAT. So non-exercise to planned in exercise. As you can see here, NEAT is, generally speaking, a greater contributor to total daily energy expenditure, especially when we look at, the averages across the week. You will burn more calories net across the week from your general movement relative to going to 2 half-hour, HIIT classes per week. So again, like, this is something that we have to take into consideration, and why we put such a big emphasis over steps and movement as one of the major priorities towards your fat loss and your weight loss journey. So again, this is going to be, like I said, an absolute game changer for many people. And, you might be one of those individuals where you're like, I work out 2-3 times per week. I eat really, really well, but I still can't lose any weight. And we go, okay, well, what does your day look like? Well, I wake up, I leave my bedroom, I walk into my office, I sit on my chair, and I stay there till 6 p.m. Get out of my chair, go to my table, I eat dinner, I go to the sofa, I get up, go back into the room, I go to bed. Cumulatively, you clock up, let's call it 1,000 steps per day. I know for some people that may seem insane, but that's the reality for a lot of people. So if you do lead a very inactive lifestyle, this is when steps can play a huge role in your ability to not only lose the weight, but to maintain your weight loss. Again, when we're making these habitual and lifestyle changes, it's something that we want to maintain, right? We can't do it and then not do it and expect to maintain the results that led to your weight loss in the first place. And it's something that I most definitely took for granted. When I was a gym floor PT, I rarely even looked at things like my steps, but naturally I was doing 10 to 12,000 steps per day without even having to schedule it into my day, right? So that's what you would call, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, this unplanned movement. And I was doing that, and I wasn't even aware of it, because I was up at the crack of dawn, 5 a.m. in the morning. I'll be working through till 9 p.m. I'll be on my feet all day. I'd have to walk to and from the bus station, to and from the tubes and the undergrounds. I'd be out on my lunch break, super, super active. And it wasn't apparent to me until I took up online coaching, went behind a desk, and I was like, holy beep, I barely move. And that's when it kind of dawned on me on how much how I was able to consume so many calories and still maintain a decent level of body composition during that period of time. It wasn't just purely down to my nutritional choices, or down to my training. It's because I was doing 80 to 90,000 steps per week on average, relative to now, which I can guarantee you is probably half of that. So again, this is when the next part we're going to go into now is well, if you're someone like me now, where you're not doing 10 to 12K steps per day, how the hell can you even hit those kind of numbers? So as I just stated, then steps are king. Secondary to your nutrition, steps are definitely up there. So how many steps per day? Let's skip to the last question there. Is 10K steps the magic number? 10K steps has come around as this kind of gold standard that everyone needs to do if you're going to yield any kind of substantial results or change. But this is just something which is just kind of been thrown out there, amongst the research, and it's kind of just stuck over time, especially in the fitness industry. But we can break that down a little bit further. Okay, so 10 minutes equates to roughly 1,000 steps. All right, so 10 minutes of movement, about 1,000 steps on average. Someone like me, it might be less when I've got longer strides. Someone smaller, it might be more because smaller strides. But generally speaking, 10 minutes, about 1,000 steps. So, the positives outside of weight loss is that generally speaking, those who move more or lead a more active lifestyle will increase, their life expectancy first and foremost. And again, that's definitely amongst the literature. Those who are doing, I think it's in excess of 2,500 steps, and those who are edging closer towards 7,500 steps, live longer and have decreased risks of cardiovascular diseases and health, which, in all fairness, kind of makes sense. So, at what point is there any further positives? So, realistically speaking, this is when we are purely coming from a weight loss perspective, because, you just being a more active individual is always going to be a positive thing. And there's going to be, like I said, there's always going to come a point in time when there's not necessarily diminishing returns, but you don't really necessarily get any more net benefits from a cardiovascular health perspective. But if the goal was fat loss, for sure, it's going to lead to superior results. Okay, so if you can afford to do 10K steps, if you can afford to do 12K, 15K, I've had clients do 20K steps. And for some people, that is absolutely insane. But when they were already doing 15,000 steps as part of their routine and lifestyle as neat beforehand anyway, actually to do 5K additionally, not such of a big ask. But when you're currently doing only 5K and I'm trying to get you up to 20K, again, ridiculous, crazy amount of numbers when you break that down to time. We're looking at probably about an hour and a half's worth of movement to hit 10K steps. And, an hour and a half doesn't just happen by chance. Now, as I said, realistically speaking, what we tend to do is kind of meet you, see where you're at, and then progress from there. So it's not like everyone jumps straight in at 10K. It's a case of, well, if you're only doing 1,000 steps right now, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 steps is going to be a more realistic goal for you. And this is something that increases over time. Okay, so for some people, even that seems like an overwhelming target to try and achieve. However, I guarantee you that cumulatively over time, you go from 3K to 5K, 5K to 7K, 7 to 8, 8 to 10, and before you know it, you're averaging, 70,000 steps for the week. And at one point in time, even to hit half of that was an absolute chore. So these things just take time. And it always comes down to your ability to plan and schedule these things into your diary. It won't happen by chance. Just like you walking into the week, hoping that you're going to get some gym sessions in, rarely ends up happening. The same applies for steps. You can't just assume that you're going to walk because, like I said, we're looking at an hour and a half or so to hit 10K steps. So you can't just, if you're someone who's sedentary like me and you're sat behind your desk, you have to plan this in or it just doesn't work. And this is obviously going to be our next kind of point of conversation. So, how to manage your steps into your day. And like I said, a plan is for you to hit 10K. Fantastic. How? When? When is this actually going to happen? This is something that you have to prioritize. Now we're looking kind of almost like I said, steps a separate thing because it's not just unplanned into your day, right? It's not currently part of your daily commute. Your steps neat wise is probably about 3K, but now we have to actively put steps and slots for your steps into your schedule, or they're not going to happen. And like I said, cumulatively, when you think about the amount of movement that does, so let's say 10,000 steps, about an hour and a half of movement per day, relative to doing a couple of HIIT workouts, accumulating maybe an hour's worth per week. Huge difference, right? Let's say within those HIIT workouts, you might be lucky to burn, let's call it 300 calories per pop that you do, during that period of time. And like I said, you do 2-3 HIIT workouts per week, 600 to 900 calories. But let's say your emphasis is now on 10K steps, you're doing that potentially maybe in excess per day. So, that's 7 lots of 3 or so hundred calories across a week, but it doesn't feel, yes, it's more time consuming, but it doesn't feel anywhere near as strenuous as the HIIT style workouts. Although the HIIT may feel like it's more effective in that moment in time, cumulatively it does not stack up to a more active individual. So when we're looking at this, it's kind of like, what's going to work best for you? Is it going to be better to do a morning walk, a lunchtime walk, an evening walk, or separated throughout the day? Can we make adjustments to your day? Can you get a stop off earlier? So again, for me, it was like when I used to work central, whether I got off at Farringdon or closer towards Old Street, again, it kind of banked me an extra 10 minutes. I would get off at Finchley Road, and I would walk all the way down towards West Hampstead. Again, just little things like that add that extra 10 to 20 minutes of movement per day, but that stacks up to a bigger result at the end of the week, right? Especially when we're looking at the averages. So it's not about what's optimal, it's about what works best for you. So when someone's like, yeah, but what about if I do 4 lots of 15 minutes? Is that going to be as good as doing an hour block? Of course. It's still going to add up, right? It's 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. It still stacks up throughout the day, especially if you don't have that ability to book out an hour in one chunk. And like I said, when you start to look at your schedule and realize, time that might be spent on the phone or Netflix and chill, or the extra half hour you're lying in bed in the morning, not really doing anything, all of these things will add towards your rate of loss, how quickly you lose the weight. And like I said, it doesn't really feel like it's something that you can do, right? Even when you're fatigued or not feeling 100%, it doesn't have to be something, you don't have to be at your best to move more. Whereas, generally speaking, if you're going to go do a weight session or a HIIT session, you kind of have to feel half decent to go and do it. So, again, this is all going to be very, very individual. What works best for you, whether you're doing hour slots, half hour slots, 10-minute slots, again, these things will stack up. And when you're going into, especially if you're based in the UK, into the winter months, that's when the walking mats and things like that are going to be practical to you. So whether you're walking on a treadmill, you're walking outdoors, again, I would argue that it's going to be the same thing. It's like I said, it's about what you can do consistently. And if you can consistently walk on the treadmill or walk on the walking mat at home relative to getting outdoors, or even one of those stand-up desks, brilliant. It's going to make much more of a difference than just getting a walk in every now and then. But I cannot stress this enough. You have to plan it into your day. Trust me, from my own experiences, it will not happen. And even if on certain days of the week when we're looking at things like averages, so let's say, for example, on Monday is a chaotic day. I only average about 6K steps. However, Friday is a little bit more low key. So Friday, I can go out my way to hit 12K steps. But we're looking at the week as a whole. So there will be days where you might peak and trough, and you might not be able to hit, let's say, 8 or 10 or 12K steps per day. But if your target across the week is 70K or 84K, it's about what you do on averages. Just like we say with your weigh-ins, yes, today's weigh-in might be high, or tomorrow's weigh-in might be low, but what was the average across the week? So again, looking at the averages as opposed to, freaking out because one day was too, you basically weren't able to get away from your desk or you're called into another last-minute meeting. Again, don't freak out about it. See where you can schedule in that extra 20 minutes that you missed out there to a later part of your week. So like I said, relatively short and sweet. But yeah, like I said, trust me, from my 10+ years experience as a coach, probably one of the most underrated areas of fat loss is just how much an individual moves, and how much that can contribute towards their weight loss goals without them having to step foot in the gym, without them having to pick up a dumbbell or do any kind of physical training. If that individual is super active, they can achieve a substantial amount of weight loss. And I'm talking 20 kilos plus. I've had clients in the past lose with doing next to no workouts, just from being physically more active in alignment with their nutritional framework. Hopefully that's all good, guys. Again, any questions, just drop them in below and I will get back to those as soon as possible. Yeah, otherwise, have a great rest of the week and I will speak to you soon.